So is this the Japanese historical drama version of Game of Thrones? Well, if the characters in Shogun spent less time scowling at each other and plotting elaborate betrayals, they might actually have time to, say, exchange names or learn some basic cultural etiquette. Instead, we get endless scenes of brooding samurai, whispers of conspiracies, and a truly bizarre fixation on ritualistic bathing. Think Game of Thrones, but with more kimonos and less dragons. Don't get me wrong, Shogun has its moments. The scenery is undeniably pretty, especially if you're into misty mountains and manicured gardens. The costumes are a riot of colour and embroidery, enough to give the wardrobe department on GOT a serious case of envy. It's visually engaging, even if it often feels like a fever dream portrayal of feudal Japan. But while Game of Thrones revelled in its complex characters and morally grey storylines, Shogun paints its world in broad strokes. There are the stoic and scheming Japanese nobles, the bewildered foreigner stumbling through cultural misunderstandings, and the occasional femme fatale thrown in for good measure. Subtlety, it seems, was left behind on the ship with Blackthorne's navigational skills. Picture this, it's 1600 Japan, and our boy John Blackthorne washes ashore looking like he's just lost a fight with a flock of very angry seagulls. To the locals, he's an exotic, slightly smelly creature, and they seem about as happy as my cat is when I try and give him a bath. The first 3 episodes are like a fever dream crash course in Japanese etiquette, which mostly seems to involve bowing a lot, getting intensely stared at by samurai, and trying to avoid making eye contact with anyone who looks slightly annoyed. So basically everyone. Blackthorne stumbles from one faux pas to the next, learning the hard way that a hearty sailor's greeting might not translate well in a society obsessed with honour and ritual. Visually, Shogun is like if a history textbook and a samurai movie had a very dramatic baby. The scenery is stunning, all misty mountains and perfectly arranged gardens. Meanwhile, costumes are so elaborate they could probably launch their own fashion line. Let's just say there's enough silk on display that I'm convinced they got one of the worms from Dune to produce it. Speaking of drama, the acting is gloriously unsubtle. Everyone either whispers ominously or glowers like they're about to challenge someone to a duel. Lord Toranaga has perfected the brooding samurai lord stare, while Blackthorne mostly just looks confused and slightly alarmed, which is fair enough. The dialogue is a treasure trove of ominous pronouncements and declarations of honour, delivered with a gravitas that would make Shakespeare blush. But the real joy of Shogun lies in the awkwardness. Imagine tea ceremonies that feel like high-stakes hostage negotiations, tense conversations where one wrong word could get you literally skewered, and sword fights that are like choreographed interpretive dance. Shogun is a historical drama at its most entertainingly absurd. It's a world where a misplaced compliment can spark a blood feud, and everyone takes themselves way too seriously. But you could grab a drink, dim the lights, and prepare for a rollercoaster ride of stoic samurai, bewildered foreigners, and enough political intrigue to make your head spin. You might not learn much about actual history, but you'll have a blast, and for some reason I'm hooked. But what about the novel the show is based on? James Clavell's work is beloved, and comparing FX Shogun to the iconic novel is an exercise in understanding the challenges that come with adapting a literary work. Both share the same foundation, the tale of John Blackthorne's turbulent integration into feudal Japan, yet they often diverge in emphasis, tone, and even plot points. One of the most striking differences is the shift in point of view. Clavell's novel places a heavy emphasis on Blackthorne's interior world. We navigate this bewildering foreign land through the lens of his confusion, his gradual understanding and his internal conflict between his own values and the dictates of the society he's thrust into. The television series takes a broader approach, delving into the machinations of Japanese nobility with considerable depth. Toranaga, a formidable presence in the novel, becomes a truly multi-dimensional protagonist in the series, his schemes and motivations laid bare. The series takes creative license to fill in the narrative gaps of the novel. Certain subplots, particularly those involving female characters like Mariko, are expanded upon significantly. This allows for a richer portrayal of Japanese society, particularly from the perspective of women who often operate within rigid social constraints. How far this gets taken in the Dismal Plus context is yet to be seen. Additionally, while the novel sometimes paints Japan in broad strokes for our outsider protagonist, the series delves into the complexities of Japanese politics, the rivalry between daimyos, and the clashing influences of religion. Clavell's novel is a sprawling epic, packed with detail and historical notes. It's a slow burn, luxuriating in cultural descriptions and the clash of personalities. The show, so far, necessarily streamlines some of this narrative. Some of the more outrageous incidents are altered or toned down. Pacing is tightened. What might take several chapters in the novel can transpire over a few intense scenes in the show. What both the book and the TV series capture is the core allure of the story in the first place, the clash of cultures, the precariousness of an outsider's position, and the political labyrinth that is feudal Japan. Both thematically explore the price of ambition, the intoxicating draw of power, and the difficult choices that can bind people together or tear them violently apart. In the end, the novel allows you to live within Blackthorne's head, while the series draws you inexorably into the world of Japanese power struggles. Like all good adaptations, the series doesn't seek to be a carbon copy of its source material. Instead, it is a reinterpretation. I did feel myself getting incredibly pissed off at the whole DI earnestness that some of the people working on the show have come out with, and I'm extremely concerned that this is going to turn into a girl boss whammon show, which is why I waited for the 3rd episode to do this review. This is on FX, on Dismal Plus, after all, and I have a sneaky suspicion it could pull a bait and switch, but I'm hoping it doesn't, and I am, on the whole, really enjoying the show. In terms of its historical correctness, the original novel was based on the real-life story of William Adams, an English navigator who ended up in Japan in 1600. His experiences as a foreigner gaining prominence within the tense political landscape of the time, which forms the backbone of the story. James Clavell, the author of the book, took a lot of creative liberties with history. He fictionalised characters, streamlined complex events, and pumped up the drama for the sake of crafting an epic tale. There's an upcoming love story that is almost entirely fabricated. In reality, William Adams was married with children back in England. The show so far sometimes simplifies and sometimes exoticises, even fetishises Japanese culture. Rituals, social customs, and political structures are often presented with a Western lens for dramatic effect. The events of the story are condensed, making it seem like everything unfolds within months rather than over the years it actually took. The core theme of Shogun, a Westerner struggling to comprehend and navigate a rigidly structured and vastly different society, is based in truth. William Adams experienced this firsthand. Whether he ends up as a side character is yet to be seen. But the series does get the general atmosphere of early 1600s Japan right. The tensions between the daimyos, feudal lords, the role of religion, and the looming spectre of civil war are reflective of the period. From what I can tell anyway, I think I'm a bit obsessed with this period of history at the moment. Though fictionalised, Lord Toranaga is based on a very real figure, Tokugawa Ieyasu, and I've probably murdered that name, the man who would unite Japan and become its first shogun. Shogun the show is more of a historical fantasy than a documentary. It uses real events and figures as a springboard for a grand sweeping story, with an Acme-sized dose of embellished drama. If you're looking for an utterly accurate depiction of 17th century Japan, this isn't it. But if you want a thrilling tale that captures the spirit of the era, the allure of political intrigue, and the clash of vastly different cultures, then Shogun delivers. I actually highly recommend, and I'm having a blast with it. Game of Thrones, it is not, and whilst the gore, anyone for poached sailor, and the sex is all there, it takes itself a little too seriously, and some of the dialogue is so weighted that I'm half expecting a narrator to pop up and say, "Look, here, this bloke is going to betray you." It's not the nuanced politically charged successor to Game of Thrones that it might aspire to be. But hey, at least it's entertaining in its own glorious way. And I'm hooked on what is the historical equivalent of a big juicy burger. There's a foundation of reality, but plenty of extra toppings and flavours added in for a satisfying, though not terribly nutritious, experience. Give it a chance, it's well worth a watch. And that's all this videographer has time for today, and I'll see you in the next one.